Missionaries and first pilgrims introduced the meat pie and tourtiere to the New World. Unlike other explorers who did not settle, they had long-term relationships with the native people and the land. In fact, the meat pie was in part responsible for the success of the first colonies as the thick crust used to help preserve the contents during the winter months. Incidentally, there is another name for the meat pie or tourtiere, survival pie. It is famously served as part of the Réveillon, a tradition enjoyed by Catholic Quebecois after midnight mass. Tourtiere is a traditional part of the winter celebration in Quebec, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. There's a lot of recipes out there for meat pies with regional Quebec variations, but the early 17th century, the French launched a more concerted effort to settle and colonize parts of the New World, led by Samuel de Champlain. French Canada and its capital, Quebec City, became a prized possession of Greater New France. Migrants brought tradition and food culture. Until 1840, publication of La Cuisine Canadienne cookbook that defined the French-Canadian national cuisine, the settlers would try to adapt French cooking in their new local environment. What developed was a local cuisine that combined traditional French methods with starkly different ingredients from the mainland. Ingredients like maple sugar, game meats, and local legumes and vegetables easily made their way into the local diet. Yet despite that increased offering differences, a lot of recipes remained similar. One of them being the tourte. The French had developed their own version of a pie crust stuffed with a savory, meaty filling. Along Canada's coast, it's not uncommon to find meat pie made with salmon or trout. In Montreal, it's all about ground pork, beef, or veal baked into a delicate shell. In the 19th century, many immigrants from French-speaking Canada came to work in the textile mills along the Blackstone River and its tributaries. The Civil War had depleted the labor pool in New England, and these motivated immigrants were welcome. According to Run of the Mill, a book by Steve Dunwell, and other books on the culture of mill towns, the French Canadians were the first and most important group in post-Civil War migrations. The newcomers were mostly from Quebec farms that had been subdivided for each generation until there were no more land to support these coming of age. In the 1870s, Woodstock, Rhode Island was more than 40% French Canadian. Within a decade, 7 out of 10 citizens in Manville were French Canadian. It is estimated that nearly 1/3 of Quebec province immigrated to New England by the 1900s, and most of them went to work in the river powerhouses that produced textiles. Tourtiere's popularity in New England can be traced to 19th century immigration. Flourishing sawmills, paper mills, and logging camps invited workers from around the world to seek new opportunities in this part of America. French-Canadian immigrants outnumbered all others. They brought along traditions from the table and beyond. Virtually every Quebecois family has a recipe, but regardless of these regional renditions, 4 spices are almost always included: cinnamon, clove, allspice, and nutmeg, which distinguishes this meat pie from others. French Canadians were the first group to keep themselves segregated by language and religion. They settled into their own villages within predominantly English-speaking Protestant communities. A subsequent immigration from Quebec followed the first wave into towns, and they were drawn to the centers of French-Canadian culture that had developed, making these little enclaves kind of flourish. They built their own Catholic churches, published French language newspapers, and developed social benefit organizations like the Society of Saint John the Baptist, whose slogan was "Our religion, our language, our customs." The similarities of these dishes both use the same spice. Historically, the dish would change depending on what protein they would have access to. The interesting comparison was made by Ken Alba in regard to the modern approach to eating the pie with ketchup. Historically, there were versions that utilized young grapes, By comparison, both recipes would add a sweet and sour element to the dish to cut through the richness and fat. The modern version that my family today is very much the Montreal version of the dish, focusing on potato and pork, with flavorings of clove and nutmeg and cinnamon. The recipe I adapted was from Martin Picard, a prominent chef in Quebec with an affinity for local regional specialties. What was interesting to me was doing academic research utilizing peer-reviewed material. It was like following breadcrumbs. I learned that my earlier research was not fruitful because of the searches I was using. Tourtiere is a generic term for pie or a specific cooking pan. Even in its earliest printings, it looked nothing like what I had growing up. We always had tourtiere during Christmas and Thanksgiving. It was symbolic because it coincided with family gatherings and fond memories.